say, a project management plan, which details the strategy of how they're going to be doing the project, the contract, which stipulates when payments will be made and what deliverables need to go out of the door. And then what about if we were to put together an unstructured document which essentially described all of the key dates and the progress of the project to date? And let's say the construction director just said that he or she wants anyone on the project to be able to query the most important things at any point in time. And the most important things being, what are we doing, and why are we doing it, and how good are we at doing this thing?
Welcome to the Beyond Deadlines podcast, where we tackle challenges that planning and schedule leaders come across on a day-to-day basis. My name is Micah, and I'm a scheduling manager for Intel.
My name's Greg Lawton. I'm the CEO of an AI schedule management company called Nodes and Links.
My name's Lawrence Rowland, and I try to apply AI to projects.
Well, Lawrence, you better try to apply really hard today because you were on the hot seat, my friend. Today's challenge is an interesting one. Lawrence, you've been parachuted into a project that is having a tremendous amount of troubles on all fronts. But after speaking with the construction director of the project, you found that one of the biggest issues is that there are a load of project documents and no one's reading them, using them, because they're scattered across a wide array of project folders. How do you go about fixing this issue?
The first thing to do would be to put it into something called ChatGPT Team and check that, if you like, whether that was allowed. Okay, so ChatGPT Team is different.
We're going to give you a real big favor and say it is 100% allowed. You can go use any tool or piece of software you want. And so ChatGPT Team, fire away.
Great. Well, the main thing about ChatGPT Team is that you're allowed to collaborate with Team, but also anything you upload doesn't get used in back-end subsequent training. So assuming that would be okay, that's obviously the first thing I'd check. Otherwise, we could go up the levels.
Well, hold on a second. I got to pause you right there because I know that's a big question for the crowd. Yeah. So you just said that for ChatGPT Teams, nothing's getting out into the world, essentially?
That's right. So it depends on whether you trust the ChatGPT server, but and whether you trust what they tell you. But they tell you that it's called ChatGPT Team. So there's ChatGPT, there's ChatGPT Plus, and then there's ChatGPT Team, which is just a few dollars a month more than ChatGPT Plus. And on that, they say that they don't use those documents for subsequent training. And so providing you trust the servers, you choose to trust the servers that they upload to, that's the level of security you get. If that's not adequate for you, you can go up another layer, and you can go basically for OpenAI sort of enterprise ChatGPT, where it's a more sophisticated service, and obviously they'll go through with you what your data privacy requirements are.
We got a tight budget here. We're not going enterprise. We're sticking on Teams.
Yeah. So
let's get on it.
So the easiest thing just to get the conversation going is, if you like, just to initially just start a conversation in the ChatGPT and upload a few documents at a time. You tend to be able to upload 5 at a time, just to show people that they can start to use it and get them confident in having the conversation. Obviously, that won't get very far, 5 documents, but that's the first thing I would do, just to check that we're not going down a blind alley.
Is there any documents, let's just say it's a general project, is there any documents that you feel would be better to start out with or worse? Now, this can either be a specific topic of a document or a specific type of document. I mean, whatever you kind of, in your experience, is there something that would just work better? Because, whenever you kick things off beginning, you really want people to grab it. And so you want to find that like easy win.
Yeah.
So is there a type of document that is better?
So I think just generally anything that's underutilized in the unstructured space. So in other words, sort of large Word or PDF documents, that kind of thing, is what might unlock sort of benefits on the project because people aren't used to always actually interacting with those. People are more used to people have their own different back-end systems, their own databases, their own SaaS platforms, etc. So and you can obviously use those, but also it's a longer conversation as to actually how good they are at, if you like, sort of returning a database query. So I would start with unstructured to show people how to start thinking about getting the most out of the LLMs. But in terms of the type of document, it really depends on the sort of problem in the project. I mean, because it's just a problem. It's just at the moment a project in trouble, and it's not using their data. So, I mean, I would tend to start with a scope document or something.
What about if we were talking here about, let's say, a project management plan, which details the strategy of how they're going to be doing the project, the contract, which stipulates when payments will be made and what deliverables need to go out of the door. And then what about if we were to put together an unstructured document which essentially described all of the key dates and the progress of the project to date? And let's say the construction director just said that he or she wants anyone on the project to be able to query the most important things at any point in time. And the most important things being, what are we doing? And why are we doing it? And how good are we at doing this thing?
Yeah, that's great. So again, you start with the using again this ChatGPT team, so you can have, if you like, any number of heads on that. And again, it's about $30 a head, I think, or $25 a head, something like that. All you would need to do is essentially then create a GPT that people on that team on those team seats could use. So what you would do there is these GPTs are a custom LLMs on top of the latest ChatGPT model, and they sort of package up some custom instructions and some knowledge. So in that GPT, you would write a few lines saying, this is what I'm packaging up in this custom GPT. You'd attach those 3 documents, and you just tell it in natural language. This is exactly what Greg said, pretty much. You say, this is what I want people to get out of it, this GPT. And then you would sit down and show people how to start using that GPT. And the key thing is they can speak to it in natural language. They can either talk to it on their phone, or they can sort of type a natural language question. And it should, for those 3 documents, it should be fine at actually picking up the answer.
Let's say that you've done this and you've launched it and people are using it. And the construction director comes to you and says, I want to understand what's the kind of level of engagement I'm getting here, what questions people are asking. Are you able to run a query to see what questions people are asking on that model?
Yeah, that's great. You'd need to no. So what you would need to do there is start speaking to people and set up a custom agent where you would actually be calling the OpenAI APIs using the same model, and you'd have to sort of use retrieval augmented generation to actually upload those documents. So it's like a slightly longer process. There are a couple of workarounds, Greg. So you could ask people to send feedback every time they use the GPT to say what they're doing. But by default, the GPTs don't send reports about actually what those conversations are.
Now, you and I, Lawrence, know that this is perfectly doable. And all you have to do is do exactly what credit card scammers do and put a front end on the thing. So, for example, you could have Lawrence.com is the front end of the GPT, and Lawrence.com sends the code to whatever GPT you've set up. So let's say we've done that. So we've put a front end on where, someone's asking, what is the contract clause for this? And you literally take that word for word and send it through to the engine and pull it back.
Yeah.
Do you have any views on whether or not that's breaking any privacy rules, or do you have any concerns that you'd voice to the construction director about this, like tracking what people are asking?
I've never thought about that, and in fact, I've also never put a front end like that and actually shared it. So, you tell me, Greg, what do you think? Because I don't know.
Well, actually, for the audience here, here's the question.
Yeah.
There's actually nothing. There's nothing in the law or nothing in the rules that says that if a piece of software provided by the enterprise is there and it's used for business purposes, that they can't track every single thing that you do on there. So they can understand what questions you are asking at any point in time. There's nothing stopping them. Now that this can be used for positive means. So, for example, if it was anonymized and the construction director's like, I just want to know, like, if 90% of the questions are about the key dates, then that's a thing that the construction director should probably know. On the other hand, you can get named consoles, so you could know who is asking the most, questions, and then start to probe them on their performance. I think this is a very, you have to tread cautiously in
It's
this
very
world.
interesting because I hadn't thought about any of this, and you're taking it to another level whereby you're thinking about, if you like, what are the interactions between the users and the people that have prepared it, even within a company, and what are you trying to what are you trying to understand about the behavior of the individuals in the company?
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been applying sort of LLMs in that respect, but I can see where you're going with that.
Since Greg took it way up top, I'll take it way down low. Always pushing it forward and farther. And I'm going to bring us back for some of the simpletons out there in the world. One thing that struck me as interesting is, Greg, your questioning took me down a line of it's already working. And so the project manager or the construction manager wants to know more about it. And where my mind went, holy smokes. It's, 40, 50, $100, $200. You have this super powerful AI agent, which you've implemented in your team. You're immediately testing and executing it to see if it works. And if it does work, it's easily expandable, across the company. And for people who have zero experience doing this, it was as simple as dragging and dropping 5 files into a little box and then typing in, a little bit of information about what those files are and what the outputs you are. When I say typing in, I mean typing in just plain English. These are the contract documents. These are the sorts of questions people will want to know. Please provide these sorts of outputs. And to me, I mean, that is such a low cost and barrier to entry to such a powerful capability that then once you have that test, you can greatly expand upon it and then go down Greg's rocket ship road, as I like to call it.
Well, my rocket ship mode as well also jumps around the cost, because if you think, what was it, Lawrence? $30 a person?
Yeah. Per month.
Well, if you've got 100 project managers on site, that gets pretty hefty pretty quickly.
Right.
For what is just questioning a couple of documents, isn't it?
Yeah, but I mean, obviously, as you'll be aware, you can if you're going, you can go the open source route and create your own sort of bot and your own web front end. And if you're just questioning documents, that's probably, for scaling, that's probably what you do. So I think the reason why I start in the OpenAI is because it's an attractive place to sort of bring people in and help people understand it. And then once you actually are honed your use case and your need for scale, you then take it away and then figure out, right, how am I going to make this scale to however many departments and that kind of thing. But at the moment, I think I just think that there's a lot of companies that are sort of dipping their toe in and not even like starting on that journey, or just like letting people just share their ChatGPT sort of moments, if you like, and that's all they're doing. Which is great, but they're all basically saying, "Oh, just show us what you can do with ChatGPT or Gemini," and people are kind of just trying different things, and then you get, I don't know, best user of the month, and people go, oh, we could do that as well. And now we've automated some tiny piece of tiny piece of process, whereas the ambition can be a lot bigger. But actually, I mean, because again, you're thinking in your capacity, Greg, of actually, I'd never even thought of all of this sort of feedback you're getting from the user, and so I can see, I'm starting to see the bigger picture now.
Yeah, one question I have on what sort of tips and tricks have you learned as you go set up that initial GPT? I've seen a lot of different frameworks for prompts. There's a lot of different information out there. But what for the audience, that you can provide that will help them set up a high quality GPT out of the gates and take all the lessons you've learned and applied them?
Yeah. So first thing to do is just try it. Second thing to do is don't think about the GPT straight away. Just do it in a normal ChatGPT conversation before you wrap it up in a GPT, and ask it the question. Once you get it to Q&A you on what your use case is, and say, I'm thinking about this, I got this problem, help me out, etc. And once you get to a certain stage when you're starting to get a tighter understanding of what that is you're trying to do, you can then actually say, right, if I was going to create an AI assistant to help me do this thing that we've agreed, ChatGPT, then what would be some lines of custom instructions you might use as a starting point? So, and that works very well to, especially for people that aren't used to actually doing that, to actually just get some first lines and then click on Create GPT. So that's one thing. I mean, there's a load more, but I'll just pause there, or I can just keep going if you like.
Yeah. Well, so starting in GPT, explain that to the users a little bit more. Why wouldn't they just jump into the configurator? Does that help them save some time? Does that get them more familiar with just prompting?
Yeah. So, and maybe, so maybe just so that you don't get put off, you can maybe you can actually, as you're saying, Micah, you can just click on Create GPT, and as you're saying, there is an automatic configurator, which is itself a GPT. So where you can say, I want this kind of thing, and then it will write some instructions. But I find that then the people distance themselves from the process and from the use case, and it gives them, if you like, that plausible deniability, because it's just done a stupid thing. So if you just get comfortable having one-to-one conversations with the ChatGPT first about anything, I would say I'd probably prefer people to get comfortable with that first before they start packaging those up, because otherwise they're just going to be. I mean, you can do it, but you're narrowing yourself to a very sort of small part of the possibility space. And one of the other reasons of why to do it initially in a chat conversation, Micah, is another tip, if you like, and especially it's something like where Greg was going with the documents. Rather than just upload the documents to GPT, as people have been doing, what you can do is, if you don't know the documents very well, ideally you know the pertinence of the documents and that kind of thing, but you can upload the documents. And I've done this with people when I've not, it's their documents and I don't know them very clearly. I've had a conversation with a GPT about what's in these documents, what are some ways of structuring and highlighting the main themes and uses of those documents. And then I go on that conversation until I'm happy, and I get it to sort of summarize it in all sorts of different ways. And then when it's done that, all again still within the chat conversation, I then say, right, ChatGPT, you've been telling me all about the pertinence of this. Now I would like you to use what you've written to now create some AI instructions to do this. And you do that for two reasons. Firstly, because the GPT has actually, you've led the GPT through a process whereby you're not allowing it to get lazy by just kind of saying the first thing to think of. You're getting it to actually analyze the documents properly. And then secondly, you've not got lazy, right? And you're waiting to figure out what you think there's no point creating a GPT until you actually know what it's for. right? And that's the hard bit. Is like, what is something that's forming a part of someone's workflow that doesn't overlap with the bit that the person likes to do, gives them a useful stepping stone onto the next thing that they do want to then do themselves. So if you either do too much or do too little, people won't use it, because it's like, like you pick up a hammer just at one particular bit, right, of actually banging it in. You don't, if it was trying to do too much, it just wouldn't be a useful tool. So once you've done that, that's when you then click on Create GPT and start to actually. Obviously, there's more tips if you like once you get going, but that's how I would initiate that. And really, you can do that in sort of 15 minutes and see if it starts to give you the kind of answers that you want.
I'd say, based on my experience, it's a very similar process. And when you step right into GPT creation, I think you start looking for the answer too fast. You haven't done enough of that homework you've brought up, and you're trying to, and I've gotten discouraged very quickly. I'm like, I'll just build this GPT really quick, and I throw it in and it doesn't do what I want to do and it doesn't answer it. And then it's funny, over the next couple of weeks, I'm messing around in GPT, having conversations with it. And I'm like, oh, that's why I didn't have it formatted correctly, or I provided too much information, or, this, that, and the other. And so, I would second your recommendation on, if you're trying to create a GPT, start with just conversational and then work your way into it. And conversing with documents, the other one, I don't know if you found this is helpful. I've found asking questions, or having it ask me questions, is actually the most powerful function in having ChatGPT. Like, hey, here's this, scheduling specification, like, what do you think are ask me 3 questions that you think are critical to understanding this document. And then I have to go through and answer those questions and work back and forth through it. And it is super, super powerful in understanding information that way.
Absolutely. But just one line back on that. If you're not going to use it to essentially make you smarter, like books make us smarter, right? Then what's the point? You might as well. You need to use it so that you're a smarter person preparing GPTs and using that and helping people to. If you're just going to use it to make your life easier and build a prompt for a prompt to think about what you want, then really, it's not an excuse for switching your brain off. That would just make us dumber, right? So I love that.
Let me jump in there, because you have the bell curve distribution of people's adoption of technology. So you have people like yourself, who I'd say are early adopters and visionaries, but you also have early majority, late majority, conservatives, pragmatists, laggards, all of these kinds of people. Saying to those people, well, if you're not going to use it to make you smarter, why would you use it in the first place? Now, obviously, I know you're having the conversation about building the thing. It's going to be difficult. How would you start to train and teach people to use this? And specifically, how would you train and teach someone who's much more of a conservative person?
Yeah. So you're absolutely right. So I think I'm implicitly talking to the people that listen to your podcast while they're walking their dog on a Saturday. So they're actually actively trying to get smarter. And I think really implicitly I'm just doing a train the trainer, right? So I wouldn't know how to teach groups like that. So I would teach people. I would teach the trainer, if you like, and I've got ways of teaching the trainer, someone that's actually got that curiosity. I completely agree with you that the second half is going to be a completely different thing, and people
beautiful.
don't need.
Okay, I'll stop you there.
Yeah.
That's beautiful, because you've defined what it is, and you define what it isn't. So you're absolutely right. So people listening to this are in that visionaries, that tech, the early adopters, that tech-enabled people right at the start of the funnel. Okay, so I'll ask you a question that I'd probably ask something like a GPT. Lawrence, what do you think are the top 3 to 5 ways that one of our listeners can use to start interacting with these. We've already heard one, which is get it to ask you questions. That's a very good one. I think that's a fantastic one. Can you name a couple of others that our listeners could immediately use?
Yeah, I would actually use some of the stuff that's kind of literally coming out this week in terms of this. As some people will know, it's essentially streaming and understanding both text and video and speech at the same time. Right now, the one that's rolled out on my machine at the moment, that's not quite there, but it's getting closer. So actually, I would have your phone. I would install the app. I mean, obviously, you don't need to be in the OpenAI environment. You can do this with the other ones. I just find it the easiest one to talk about. And if you're sitting reading, and if you're sitting working, and I've literally been doing it this week, you can have it on listening to you. It's a bit like you would think that Alexa should be doing it. You can have it sitting there, and then you can just talk to it and say, and then ask a question without breaking the flow of actually what app you're in at work, or without breaking the flow of the book that you're reading or the paper that you're reading, and saying, and you can parallel process a question. So you can send it a question and say, tell me about this idea, I've not heard that, and then carry on reading until it comes back with the answer. And it's almost like you're still staying in the same app, because you're still staying in whatever you were working on. So the speech is just so much better now. I tried it like sort of 3 months ago. It was great, and you were tapping it and that kind of thing. But it's just that, and then you'll find it. You'll just use it in a different way. So that's probably one. So that's one. 2 or 3 more to go.
It's a big one. It's a big one. That's a big one, though. I mean,
it's so another thing you could do. For me, a lot of it is about finding, if you like, what are the gaps between the things that I understand and what are the things that I don't even know to ask the question, and you can start to make progress in that area, right? So you can say, I understand something about this aspect of project controls, this aspect of project management, this aspect of graph databases, this aspect of behavioral theory or whatever, and then there's something I'm missing. Right? What are the candidates for the thing that I'm not missing? Because the thing that I'm missing, because so much of stuff these days, it's already been worked out in another discipline. But you if you like to use already old language, you haven't got the Google search term. All right. So let's think about, for example, something like if you're thinking about, I was talking about it this morning, if you're thinking about how people make decisions and how much they prioritize the present relative to other timeframes, then you can think about this thing called time discounting, and think about there's something called hyperbolic time discounting, right? Where actually they more or less know the shape of how much you prioritize the present or the near present, but you'll never find that unless you. But it knows, if you like, what that whole discipline is. So all of your kind of half jumbled ideas of just believe that there's already a discipline out there that solved your problem, because there is one that's probably 2/3 solved your problem, but it's framed in a different way. So so ask it, what is that called? So so I'll give you a silly, well, it's not a silly example, but I was going to say one thing to your audience. If I was thinking about one thing to say to your audience, I might as well say it now, because it's related, because it shows how I used it. One of the things I find very useful, right, is, so this is, can I, if I could just make a more general sort of point to your, I was thinking, I don't have much to say to planners or schedulers, but one of the things that might help is that I think about things a lot as graphs, and obviously we think about these dependency graphs, these Gantt charts, etc., which has got the nodes as being the activities, and then the edges are dependencies. So I would often what I do is I invert edges and nodes, if you like, and I just double check that I'm actually using the right thing. Have I got the right thing as the edges and the right thing as the nodes? So So the particular takeaway on this with regard to that point is sometimes I would say it's actually worth just checking, especially if you're in a project controls paradigm. Am I being too stuck by assuming that, if you like, I'm focusing on the tasks as being the nodes and then the relationships being the dependencies? And would I actually get some benefits from flipping those? Now, anyway, so that's what I wanted to say. But relative to answer the question,
Sounds like nodes and
I was
links to
thinking,
me.
Yeah. Well, actually, you have to switch your now. You have links and nodes. So best of luck.
There have to be links and nodes. Just let me
Best of
probe on
luck
that a second.
figuring out that contract document.
How would a dependency be a node? Because a dependency doesn't exist in itself. A task exists in itself, but a dependency doesn't exist in itself. Now, I know mathematically you can invert them and that kind of thing. But I'm just curious, what do you get out of that flip?
And to
we're
all
already
of our
2 brackets
listeners,
in. Sorry?
Yeah, to all of our listeners, you can now pull up in ChatGPT, and this is a perfect place to start having it tell you what Lawrence and Greg are talking about.
No, that is a good example. I tell you what I'm going to do. Can I come back to you? That's a great point, obviously, Greg. I'm conscious I'm 2 brackets deep. All right, and I just need to dig myself out. Otherwise, it's going to confuse everyone.
And also we're getting close to time. We like to keep these short and sweet, and so my thought process: we're going to have Lawrence back on. I think we've gotten to a really good space. We were deep in the weeds. We love to give tactics. We love to get strategies. I think we've given the users a ton. Lawrence, any final thoughts? And you can obviously follow Lawrence on LinkedIn. He publishes an amazing amount of brilliant content that you can go follow and find him on. We'll put his profile in the show notes below. Any other places that we can follow you on or find, any sort of final thoughts you want to leave the crowd with?
Thanks, Micah. No, I just follow me on LinkedIn if you like. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate you having you on today. Folks, one thing that we give out in our weekly newsletter, Safe for Work prompts. So each week we provide you one prompt that you can use that doesn't require company data or setting up a ChatGPT Teams profile. However, I'm going to recommend you go do that after this conversation. Spin the wheels a little bit, that one. Get a proof of concept set up and go pitch your boss, get some impact, get a promotion. Happy days. So check out our newsletter. If you wouldn't mind also subscribe and like our content and share. I'm sure there's one person out there that you know would benefit from this podcast. Go share it with them. Help uplift them as well. So from us at Beyond Deadlines, have a great week.